Welcome back to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson from Protean Machining, and this week I am joined by Easton of Moria Manufacturing again. Thanks, man, for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Of course. So, what's been going on in your world? I mean, I feel like we both have gotten to the point where we're so busy, we're not really posting on Instagram all that much. So, as far as anybody might know, like you got a new lathe. I guess you had it since the last time we talked when Drew was on.
Yeah, no. So let's see, what else is new? Just working on all sorts of different projects in the shop. I actually had a little bit of a slowdown for like about 2 weeks, and I chose to not actually take that as a slowdown and instead decided to get all my backlog of shop projects done, which has been interesting. And then as I started doing shop projects, then more customers started popping back up and it's gotten kind of a nightmare. So my shop is like a 50-50 fab shop and machine shop right now. I've got grinding dust everywhere. I've got it's a disaster right now. It's I'm just working on well, obviously it's all of the shop projects I've been putting off are fab work because I hate fab work and I'm bad at it. So stuff like building a surface plate stand and doing some other I had to build a cart for the welder and then helping a buddy with he's taking it was a Tormach 770 that a customer shipped back with no gib in the Z-axis. So it
Nice.
cracked the ball screw in 3 places and destroyed the Z-axis ways. So
Jeez.
he just said, I'm going to throw out the column and I'm going to build a whole new column and I'm going to turn it into a horizontal. And so helping him with that. And so this weekend we filled the base of the stand with epoxy granite and added about 400 pounds to the weight of the machine.
Is that why you sent that picture of you like in a full Tyvek suit?
Yeah, we were working with like a really nasty epoxy, and so it was just like I'd rather not get that in my hair and such. So just put on a Tyvek suit. And it was an interesting experience. I've never mixed up epoxy granite before, but it seemed to go okay. I tapped on it today and it seems cured.
Nice. Where'd you guys get the granite? Is like granite powder readily available or?
Well, so I think epoxy granite is like a really loose term for like polymer concrete, I think is probably a more accurate term.
Okay.
So we were just using sand and gravel.
Gotcha.
Which is like a more common mix. I think even like the granitan bases that United Grinding makes, I think those are even. I don't even think those are granite.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm not 100% sure if they are or not, but they're. I think they're just. If from looking at what they're using, I think it's just a similar like gravel sand kind of mix.
Gotcha. How many gallons did it take of epoxy?
So Norman grossly underestimated, which was kind of funny. He got like a gallon of epoxy because it's on paper it like seems like a really small amount because I think it's like 13% epoxy and the rest is but then when you start calculating where you're like several buckets of sand, 13% is still several gallons of epoxy.
Oh no.
And so we got one section of it poured and then possibly this weekend, but also I might be in New Jersey this weekend. But we're gonna pour the next couple sets, but we got to keep rotating the stand and keep pouring. But
that sounds like a fun project, though. Like
it is. No,
hacking a Tormach.
He supports my bad ideas. I support his. He was the one who he told me to buy the Nakamura. I did, and it ended up being a good / bad idea. I mean, it was very costly, but it's been a good machine. So
nice. Yeah. So how is that doing? Is it make? I mean, obviously it's making parts.
So it honestly wasn't making parts really until like a couple of weeks ago, in the sense of like I had maybe done batches of parts of like 50 parts, or like, and I wasn't really using the sub spindle too much in most of the parts I was making. I was making these like titanium parts that I just did like a fairly small batch of those, and so I was like just using it as more of a chucker on that one. And then, but like about 2 weeks ago, I actually did like the first sort of large job with it, where it's a job I've ran several times before, but I usually just do it as 3 ops. And I got it down to 2, and I think I can get it down to 1 with the Nakamura.
Nice.
So just transferring to the sub, but the Nakamura ran straight for about a week and a half, 8 hours a day kind of thing. And that was it was a really good test, and it was cool to see because I've ran these parts, so I know how they go tolerance wise and everything. So it's cool to see how it performs, like a direct comparison to the Miyano. So
Yeah, that's really cool. So I think we had talked either in DMs or something. What have you noticed between the difference? Because I think you had said that you noticed growth more in the knock than you did in the Miyano.
yeah, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily that much more considering the size difference.
Okay.
So the Nakamura I'm seeing moves maybe like 5/10 to like 8/10 over the course of an 8 hour period, versus the Miyano moves maybe 1 or 2/10, like if even kind of thing.
Right.
And so, but I think the bigger difference is like that Nakamura has to be leveled. The Miyano, I've never leveled that Miyano.
So it's
And
just crazy rigid.
yeah, it's like you could put that thing on the ceiling and it would still probably cut totally fine.
Well, because that
And
thing has an integral coolant pan and everything too, right? Like that thing is just one giant brick.
yeah, it's literally just a rectangle. And
That's
that's
pretty epic.
it. I think the rib thickness of the coolant tank is like 1.5 inch thick cast iron.
That's insane.
And then like the coolant is just sitting in there, so the thermal properties are like the coolant is just absorbing that heat the whole time. That
Right.
Miyano gets really hot, but it just doesn't change. And I think the it also helps that the ball screws are maybe only like a foot long.
Oh yeah, I guess your travels aren't that much on that machine.
I think I've got like 6 inches of X travel and like 9 inches of Z travel or something on that machine. It's pretty small, so I mean that also probably helps. Miyano apparently like a big flaw of Miyanos, like their Achilles heel is their thrust bearings go bad because they're putting the ball screws under so much tension. I think it just wears out the thrust bearings.
Oh
And
wow.
so I think that's part of it. But again, I mean, the Nakamura isn't bad. Like, it's nowhere near, like, I used to run a Mizak, and the Mizak was also really repeatable. But for like the first 20 minutes, it would just make absolute garbage parts. And like, you would just sit there and you'd have to get the Mizak super hot. And then once it was really hot, it would just stay. But it's like that Nakamura, I turn it on in the morning and it makes good parts. I turn it off and then I turn it back on, it makes good parts. So that was cool to see that it performs really similarly to the Miyano, but it's just I think just due to the size, it maybe moves a little more.
Was it a big? Because you were starting to get your LD41 working on both spindles. Was there a big learning curve jumping from Miyano's way of doing that to the knock, or is it all just Fanuc and it doesn't matter?
Sort of. The way the LD41 worked is more similar to a Swiss actually, because the LD41 had a dual channel controller, so it was
Oh right,
you had
yeah,
a 2 path. So that was a little bit that's definitely different where I don't have to do any weight codes or anything like that on the Nakamura. But the in terms of like the actual sequence of operations, it's pretty much about the same. The Nakamura is a little easier just because I can actually do like torque sensing. So when it comes in with the sub, I can have the sub hit the part, and like when it sees the torque spike, that's when it clamps. And I'm not using that yet, but I was using that as an error detect. So like if the part changes too much, it'll see that. So there's some nice features on that Nakamura that are just not on that LD41, just probably just due to age difference kind of thing. But
right. Because how old was the LD and how old is the knock?
so the LD I think was an 89 or 90, and then the Nakamura is a 2005.
Yeah, I was gonna say anything post like 2000, Fanuc is like night and day difference from pre 2000.
So I mean, it's interesting you say that. I don't know how much. I don't have the newest Fanuc mill control I've ever used is in 1993. But the differences between my Miyano and my Nakamura, my Miyano is a 1987,
Mhm.
and that's a 0T versus a 18i. There's not a ton of differences actually. I mean, there are some differences, but like the actual like the the sequence of button presses is pretty similar. It's
Oh yeah,
actually
yeah.
significantly easier to load programs on the 1987 control than it is on the 18i, which is pretty funny.
That continues to be the case all the way up through a 2019 control because our Matsura at work is, I mean, I don't know, it's got to be 20 button presses. It's like, oh, I got to change the, what's it called, active folder. I got to, go and find it. I got to F input, blah, blah, blah. It's like a million button presses. So, but it is all about the same. Like, I mean, I've run mills from what, 83 to 2019, Fanic, and like, yeah, they've changed, but they're more or less the same. Like the way they lay out their menus and the amount of memory really hasn't changed much.
Yeah, the amount of memory is, oh, that's so depressing when you like see that like brand new robo drill and it's like it has 5 meters of memory. Like,
Right.
first off, let me quick do the calculation to convert between meters and actual real units.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Like if you're still measuring memory in the length of tape it could have taken up, you're doing it wrong.
yeah. I mean, that's the. I'm still kind of annoyed that like my 2019 Speedio has 100 megabytes of memory. It's like you can put more than that.
Yeah. Though I think the C is upgradable to what, 500 megs, something like that.
Wow, that's a ton.
I know, a whole half a gig.
I mean, to be fair, I've never used anywhere close to that, but still.
No, I think the biggest program I've loaded into the Speedio is 7, maybe
Yeah, I think
8.
mine's maybe like 16. I had like a really weird program that I was doing a bunch of surfacing in, but it was like I don't know. So I get the point that it doesn't have to be that, but like something I noticed when I was trying to buy a compact flash card for the Nakamura is like I literally got scammed by Amazon in the wrong way. Like I tried to buy on the listing on Amazon, it was a 256 megabyte card.
Mm-hmm.
And when it arrived, it was a 256 gigabyte card, which means I technically got scammed.
Right.
But like normal human beings would not have been pissed off by that.
Right. But it doesn't support that, I'm assuming.
So weirdly enough, I had a whole bunch of problems right when I got the machine with compact flash cards not being supported. Like any of them, I couldn't get any of them to work.
Mm-hmm.
Even like actual like 1 megabyte cards. Except for the 256 gig card, I was able to format using the control, and that card is like the one that works perfectly now.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you'll use less than a gig for the entire life of the machine, but you got it if you need it.
The way I also run all my lathes is I use O1001 for all of my like actual part programs. And then O1002 is my looping program.
Okay.
So I always just replace the code in the control every time I put a new program in. So I'm realistically never going to exceed that at all.
That's more or less what I do in the Speedio too. Like I have got, I think 4 or 5 program numbers that I use constantly, and like I'll use them per work offset and then just override them.
Yeah, and it's just like the shop I used to work at, we would like save every program in Dropbox, and it's like the problem with that is you start changing tools or you can't get the same insert or whatever, and it's like you're screwing around for like an extra 20 minutes rather than if you just have it like the ability to just go back and repost kind of thing.
Right.
And
yeah.
So,
well, and it's tough because like at my day job, we have to do that because most of our customers require a frozen process. So like you can't even touch the program without, well, you can't touch finishing tools or finishing tool programs without customer approval. So like you have to save all of that. And like it does come up like, we're like, oh, we put it in the horizontal today and now it needs to be tool 31 instead of 1. And it becomes a giant pain where you're like hand editing stuff at the machine just to make it work. And it sucks. I totally agree.
That sounds frustrating. Yeah, we used to do stuff like that all the time. Where it's like the bigger one would be we'd pull up a program, and so the ST10 that I used to run, the coolant pump died on it. So the only coolant we had was high pressure. We didn't even have flood anymore. But like there'd be an old program. Sorry, there'd be an old program where it would have either an M8 and an M88 in it. And if you run an M8 in the later, like
Mhm.
after the pump died, the machine would like freeze up. You'd have to like power cycle it.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so it was like if you didn't check through one of the old programs kind of thing, it was like, oh man, now I got to power cycle it in the middle of a cut. And it's like,
Well, that
yeah,
sounds
it
like
was just
fun.
so, yeah. So what have you been up to?
So I am running that brass production order I told you about a little while ago over DMs. And so it's our first fourth axis part. We're doing
Oh,
a
yeah,
bunch of
okay.
radial 832 holes, and I'm doing it with one of those thread whirlers or whatever you want to call them, where it bores the hole at the same time as threading.
How are those working out?
I mean, it's brass, so it's like cut and butter, but it's working great. Like the first time I used it, I had 2 passes on, and it cut with zero comp a perfect thread. Like thread
That's
gauge went in, no go didn't go in. It's like, this is amazing.
so. What was the logic behind using that tool versus just a drill, a tap, and an end mill?
So there, 3 of the holes are through into a bore, and then 3 of the holes are blind, and they're close enough to the through bore in the center of the part that I would have had to end mill out the miner anyway.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, if I'm already going to have to spend the time end milling, I might as well save a tool change and save a tool position and just end mill and thread all at once, because it's not that much slower.
Yeah, no, I've never used one of those things. Those things seem pretty cool though. I'm definitely interested in like, so did you end up getting, do you have to like bore one direction and then thread mill the other, or do you just, is it just a bore tool path essentially?
It's a thread tool path. So you
Oh, you
thread
just do it.
in, yeah, you
Okay.
just the thread, and this one's from Moldino, which is a Mitsubishi. It's Mitsubishi tool with some other tool company. I'm blanking on who the partnership is with,
I think
but
there's like a Saunders video of him using that tool, right?
he uses the OSG one, I think.
No, because I think it's like Mitsubishi like came out and like helped him or something.
Oh, maybe I must have missed it then. I'm
I
pulling it
don't
up
know.
right now, but you spin it backwards, so it's M4, and then it's G42, and you bore in at the pitch of the thread, and it's got, I think, 2 complete threads and 1 partial thread on the bottom,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
and then you just lead to center and pull out. And I ended up going to 1 pass because I'm making like 300 of these parts, so it saved me a minute, which ended up being 300 minutes of cycle time.
How are you liking the T200?
It's great. Yeah, I didn't put in the backlash parameters till today, but again, these are fairly loose parts, so I wasn't too worried about it. But yeah, it's quick and was easy to set up.
And are you running coolant on the brass parts, or are you just cutting dry?
I'm running coolant just for chip evacuation.
Yeah, I wonder if you'll get the fun green coolant.
Well, hopefully not. We'll see. My coolant pickup is next week, I think, the 20th. So I hope that
Oh, you're gonna do a swap?
no, well, we'll see, I guess. But the S700 coolant was good up until I'm running all of the brass. So hopefully it remains good, and I'll just filter it if I need to when I'm done. And it's going to be running. I think I've got 30 hours of cycle time on these parts, so it's going to be running all day every day for the next week,
Are
and then
you
I'll just
sold them in like
clean
a
it.
3-jaw?
No, so the part ends up with a hole through the center, and what I do is I drill it and then bore it, and then I've got a fixture that I made that has a boss on it, and then a 440 thread goes through the center and bolts it to the fixture.
Oh, okay. That's pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, and I it's kind of a pain because I would have loved to do these in 3 ops, but I end up having to take them back off the fourth and then do the drill and ream for the center. But that's because the 2 holes that intersect that center bore, if I don't ream last, they leave a nasty burr into this tight tolerance bore. And so if I do it this way, it's really not that bad. Like I think I'm at 5 minutes apart total for 4 ops, and
Oh,
it's
that's pretty good. I mean, we were talking about that the other day, I think, where it's like you think you can do a part in 2 ops and then it ends up being 3 because of some weird little like quirk of the part you're specifically making. I was making these little star-shaped parts and it was like a 20 thou wall thickness around the part. And
oh,
so like I thought I could just machine it, flip it into a set of soft jaws and clamp it, but I start trying to pull the top hat off and the part just like collapses as soon as the top hat is removed and then like just shreds and it just ripped one straight out of the vise and it was like, okay, well that's not going to work.
yeah. I totally. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the game, unfortunately. Like everything that's easy ends up being hard, and everything that you thought was going to be hard, you're like, oh, I don't know why I worry about that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean it's the one is none, two is one rule. That's the other day I thought, oh man, I gotta machine this. I gotta slot through a bunch of stainless. I'll buy 4 end mills. I didn't even break one through 500 parts. It's like, okay, well,
Right. But you had it. Had you only had one, you probably would have broke it.
exactly.
Yeah. I just looked it up, by the way. Moldino is Hitachi and Mitsubishi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I don't think I shared it on the podcast. So I originally bought a Vargas thread mill for this that does the same thing where you spin it backwards, because I didn't want one where you are conventional cutting all the way down, because a lot of them are like that. And so Vargas makes one, and then apparently Moldino does. And so MSC was like, oh, Vargas will ship it out on, I don't know, I think it was last month, the 10th or something. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was the 10th. And then I was like, okay. And then it was like the 12th or something. I still hadn't heard anything. So I reached out to MSC, didn't hear anything back for like a solid day. And so I emailed Vargas directly. I was like, hey, this is supposed to ship from manufacturer. What's going on? And they're like, oh, these aren't in stock in the US or in Israel. So we're going to be making these, and they won't be shipping from Israel till the 10th of October. So they would have shipped yesterday, or I guess Friday.
Oh god, that's awful.
Yeah. And I emailed MSC and I was like, hey, so what's going on? Because the manufacturer is saying that they're not going to ship for a month. And when you said, like, it was like 7 to 10 days, I think, is what they had said. And finally they got back to me. They're like, oh yeah, we just found that out too. Is that going to work for you? I was like, no. I was like, I will be done with the parts. And like, turns out I'm not. But like, I was like, no, I needed it now. Thanks. Can you cancel that? Like, go ahead and cross that $200 tool off my list, please.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like, just tell me. Because they even confirmed it. Like, it said, when you're ordering tools that are shipping from manufacturer, it says like, oh, we will confirm in the order email when the actual shipping date was. And they had confirmed it as like 7 to 10 days. And then I was just going to be sitting without a tool for a month, apparently. So,
That's yeah, I just generally don't trust MSC's dropship program.
well, it's
Like
weird too, because sometimes it's great. Like I bought pins from them and it says like, oh, drop shipping from Vermont Cage or whatever. And like, it'll be here in 2 days. And then some days it's, that thread mill all over again, where it's like, I don't know, your tool will show up whenever it shows up. We don't care.
do you know is Vargas and Vardex the same company?
Yes, Vargas makes the Vardex threaders, I think.
Okay.
If I remember
I've
right.
had really good luck with them drop shipping actually. Because I got I bought a I've been trying to go all through coolant on the Nakamura.
Mhm.
Just
Well,
because
now that you have 1,000 PSI, I mean,
yeah, it's like
why
why
wouldn't you?
not kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so I went and I was like looking around. Iskar wants like $400 a holder for the threading tools. Vardex
Jeez.
makes a better holder
Mhm.
that like has like, or in my opinion, a better, instead of like the coolant coming out of the clamp screw, it like comes out of just like a little nub that they like machined into the holder.
Oh, that's cool.
So like it's not going to move when you adjust the screw.
Right.
And they want like $126 for their holder.
Wow. That's insane.
And so I ordered it and it was like it drop shipped within a day. And it's been great. It's like one of my favorite tools I've got in that Nakamura right now. It just the threads come out like no burrs.
Is it a topping insert?
So on the parts that I was running recently, it is a topping insert just because I run so many of those and they're all it's an M27 by like 1.5 thread.
Oh, so a totally normal thread. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the customer supplies the gauge on that one, so that's totally fine. It's like
Oh, nice. Okay.
I've got nice go no go gauges for them. I'm supposed to like ship the gauges back and forth every time I make the parts, but at this point, I just like if they need them back, they'll let me know,
Right.
and I just mark them as their gauges and keep them here because every couple of months I get a PO and I got to run the parts again. So
Makes sense. Yeah. And no, but that is Vargas and Vardex are the same company. I think honestly, had it been stock, they would have drop shipped it no problem. But the fact that like there was zero stock on the planet versus like even if it was in Israel where Vargas is from, I think they still would have gotten here relatively quick.
and the other thing about them is I think they are either owned by Iskar or partnered with Iskar somehow because all of Iskar's threading inserts are made by Vardex.
Yeah. I think they're all under the same parent company.
It's like the IMC group or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it seems like good stuff though.
Yeah, it seemed good, and like they had a decent speeds and feeds calculator and all that, but yeah, just didn't work out. Maybe in the future it will.
So you've got so it sounds like the T200 is still on the S700. You ended up not moving it to the new machine?
Yeah, I put it on the model of the new machine that I have, the F600, and it just was going to take up more travel than I really wanted to mess with. And like we already had it on the S700, we already had it dialed in, we already have it hanging off the travel, so it just made the most sense. Eventually, we might move it over there or just get another one for the F600. But for now, there I need it for the next few jobs on the S700, so that's where it's going to stay.
Your next one up is like titanium, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so I got to decide how I want to approach that because my first instinct was to build like a full tombstone that does all of the ops at the same time and is one and done. But I also need to really get these rolling, so I might
it's
just
also a fairly small quantity, right? It's only like 55 parts, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But they'll be back, so I'm not too worried about building a fixture and sitting on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. The reason for those who are listening, the reason I know what Dylan's making is I make parts for the same customer.
Yeah.
So I've just made a whole bunch of parts in the same quantities and the same materials and everything. It's just so I bought a couple collets for the next time around kind of thing. And it's like it's once you make them, you're like, all right, I figured out how to make these this time. And I don't know if I told that story in the last time I was on here of the just disaster of trying to figure out how to part off 2.5 inch diameter
You did, because
titanium.
you were telling us about the old man from Iskar that was like
yeah, okay, yeah.
the king of speeds and feeds and like diagnostics.
That was super cool though. I talked to him recently too about I don't remember what it was. I think it was grooving, and he was just like, "Well, what material?" He's like, "Well, what shape is your like? What's your axis configuration?" I was like, "What?"
He's like, I know them all. Let's go.
I was like, "It's a Nakamura SC250." So, and I was like about to like explain where everything. He was like, "Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, that's like, oh, okay, cool."
That's awesome.
But I found a new parting tool, so I'm gonna fork over I think it's like $2,200 for the new parting tool.
Oh, I didn't know it was that much because we had talked about it and I thought it was you said the inserts were cheaper, but I didn't realize the body was so much more expensive.
So the body is cheaper. This is currently what I'm using it's a 1-inch stick tool,
Mhm.
left hand parting blade,
Okay.
and it can part off up to a 2-inch diameter. It can kind of part off a 2.5-inch diameter if you like really fudge it, but it gets really dicey. And so that tool is I think $480 plus shipping, and then it uses like the same inserts as all of the parting blades I have in my shop.
Okay.
But that one, if it blows up, you have to buy the whole new thing. Versus when I went to like the Methods open house and Iskar had a booth there. I was just like complaining to the guy. I was like, yeah, I just blew up like 2 parting tools in a row. And like I have no clearance on this tool. And I really wish you guys made a tool that was like could go from small bar diameter all the way up to like 2.5 capacity. He's like, well, we do. And he like reaches under the table and pulls out this whole assembly. So instead of the parting tool going into a stick holder in the turret, the parting tool, it goes into like this, or there's like a block that mounts directly to the BMT interface. Then it has like V grooves going up in the Y direction.
Okay.
And then there's a secondary block that mounts to those V grooves. So you actually have like Y-axis adjustment by just like turning a screw.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the blade is like this tiny little like just piece of blade that like bolts to the side of that block. So it's a 3-piece assembly. The block that bolts to the turret is like $600 or $700. Then there's like the V groove assembly that's another like $600 or $700. And then the blade is like only like $100,
Okay.
I think. So when you blow up a blade, it's only $100 that time instead of 480.
So why wouldn't it take out the V groove thing, like the intermediary part?
So the blade is just like a thin 3 millimeter thick piece of like sheet metal looking thing that actually just bolts to that.
Oh, okay.
So if you bend a blade, which is what I was having problems with in titanium,
Right.
you just have to replace you just have to take out like 3 countersunk screws.
Oh, nice. Okay. That makes sense.
So, and then it's also actually shorter, so it'll clear my sub spindle, which it doesn't currently with the blade I've got. It doesn't actually clear the sub spindle. So you have to bring the tool in front of the sub spindle before you bring the sub spindle forward. I found that one out the hard way.
Oh, no. So that's where the second parting tool went?
So I've gotten through 3 of them since I've had the Nakamura. Except for the last one, the one that I bent when I was doing the titanium job.
Mhm.
It's bent like 5 thou. And so I was like, I'm not going to put this in the scrap bin. So I like put it in the drawer. And then I was running those stainless parts that I was like the big job I just ran. So I was proving them out in brass just because then I can just run it with the door open and everything.
Right.
And I didn't put a full 36-inch bar in. And so I got to I just kept running parts as I'm proving out the program, not even thinking about, wait a second, this bar is going to get too short at some point. So it came in for the transfer, pulled the bar out of the main spindle.
Oh, no.
Then parted it off. And it just chucked like a 3-inch long segment of brass at the parting blade.
Oh, no.
And so I just nuked that blade. And so I was like, oh shit, because this is not a non-stock like dropship item from Iskar.
Of course. Yeah.
And I have to be running these parts now. And so luckily I saved that like 5 thou bent blade.
Mhm.
Because under like 2-inch diameter, that blade works totally fine. You would never even know it was bent.
Oh, okay. Makes
And
sense.
so that one's the current one that's in there, and that's going to stay in there until I get the new parting assembly. But
Have you ordered it already?
no, it's one of those things that's just sitting in the cart like, ugh.
Yeah, I understand. You're like, do I really need $2,200 of the parting? Yes, but I'm gonna wait.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I've been there.
It's one of those things when the invoice comes in from those stainless parts I ran, it'll feel a little bit better.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, it's tough being a small business and buying things based on future money and not current money. You're like, but I don't want my account to go down that much. Like, no.
yeah, it's just like, do I really need this right now? Or is this a luxury? And you're like, no, I just wasted so much time. This is not a luxury. This is a business. This isn't like me just screwing around in my garage anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, and when the blade's that cheap, you can stock, 3 or 4 on hand and not feel terrible about it.
And the idea is hopefully I can convince Iskar to make they technically make the same parting assembly for my Miano,
Oh, really?
but it's for like 3 generations newer than my Miano. So they like put the pin spacing is like it's like 2 or 3 millimeters off of what it needs to be.
Oh, damn.
And so I think if I just talk to my Iskar rep, I can just have him make a custom block. And then I can actually just completely share same parting tool all the way around the shop kind of thing.
That'd be epic. That's the way to do it for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's because the really nice part about this one too is that it can be either left or right-handed. You just switch the bleed to either side of the like V groove block.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so which is really nice because if I'm running the Nakamura without the subspindle, I want a right-handed parting tool.
Mhm.
And if I'm running it with the subspindle, I want a left-handed parting tool.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Huh. That's cool. I'm looking forward to it. Hurry up and order it so I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'll post a picture on Instagram too because Iskar is nice. They have all the CAD models, so I've got all the CAD models and I just assembled them in Fusion to check clearances and things. So
Hell yeah. Let's jump into questions. We had a surprising amount. I like waited till the last second because I was like, I'm sure Easton and I'll have plenty to talk about. And it seems like every time I do that, people surprise me and they're like, oh, okay, time to send a bunch of questions.
well, I'm just surprised too because like what I've been on here 3 or 4 times. It's like what more could people possibly ask? Kind of thing was my thought on it. But then
Turns out we're both wrong.
yep.
Let's see. So NYDLS asked, have customers ever done a double take when they see how old or not old you are?
I don't generally see that reaction. I have a lot of my customers I don't think I've even met in person. And then I did have one customer I think that decided not to go with us once they read something on our website. I've got something on my website that says something to the effect of like, we're a small business. And they said, never mind, actually, we don't deal with small businesses. I was like, okay.
Right. Not realizing that the term small business applies up to like what, 80 something employees or.
Yeah, it was just, so I don't know if, I don't think anyone's ever really done that double take kind of thing. And if they do, who cares? It's
Right.
not, if you're not going to like be I've gotten a couple customers where it's like, when I don't get the job, I'm like, wow, I guess I really dodged a bullet on that one. And it's like,
yeah, I definitely agree. I think that both of us have learned that lesson time and time again as our businesses become more mature. Is like, it seems to me at least like most of the jobs I lose or don't get, there's a really good reason, and like it would have been a giant pain down the line, or like they're really needy customers, or it would have taken up way too much machine time, or something along those lines.
it's one of those things where it's like something I've noticed is like if you bid a job way too high and it's a real customer that actually wants to work with you, they'll tell you, hey, that was pretty high. Like, you want to come down on that price a little bit?
Right.
And then you can like talk with them about how you can maybe bring the price down, and then they'll stay a customer. Versus the ones where it's like you send them a quote and they just never respond. It's like, I have a feeling that probably wouldn't have been a good customer in the first place.
Right. Yeah, or they weren't a serious customer. They were just, using you for budgetary reasons or something like that. Tire kicking.
Yeah, exactly.
His next question, biggest WTF moment. And he mentions when the fella helped load a surface grinder and ruined it.
Oh man, this is machining, Daryl. Like, this is there's too many to count. Man.
The one I can think of, I want to save for worst crash stories or stupidest things you've seen a coworker do, because I've got a good one for that.
I've got a couple good ones for that too.
Well, we'll save that then, because those are usually the biggest WTF moments.
Yeah.
There's the other one. How many acquaintances from high school are awestruck at your shop?
That's another one where I don't even know the answer to that. I talked to like 3 or 4 people from high school, and contrary to what maybe the audience thinks, I was not very popular in high school. I know that's really hard to believe. But the other thing is I spent like majority of my high school exactly where I am right now. So
Right. Yeah. You've been working in your shop for a while. So, well, actually, funny story about that. So, my high school was what they called themselves a college prep high school. So, like, we didn't have any auto shop, we didn't have any machining courses or anything like that. So, the only thing on campus that I could take as an elective that was making things was theater productions. And so, you built all the sets and welded all the sets and all that stuff. And my teacher for that just recently retired end of last school year and came by the shop this last weekend because now he's working part-time as a retired like shop helper at a local cabinetry and wood shop. And he's like, repairing all their machines and doing all that kind of stuff for 20 hours a week or whatever. And he brought by, they've got like a big, what is it? Delta bandsaw, and the bearing guides for the blade, the eccentric bearing guides are like totally shot. And apparently some company in China bought up all of Delta's stock and bought Delta the company. And so the next ones he could get were like 12 to 15 months out. And so he was
holy
like, "Hey,
shit.
can you
What?
make these for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And like, so I got to show him around the shop, and it was cool to be like, "Hey, yeah, this is what I've done with my life since I left high school."
That is cool. No, I think I've ran into a couple teachers, and one of the nice things is I was like really big into Rocket Club in high school. That was like
Mhm.
the only extracurricular activity I did. So every once in a while, I reach out to them and see if they need any laser cut parts or anything like that. Because most of the like most of the more complex stuff they do is all like just hand machined, I guess, by like people with files and Dremel. But
Right.
like for one of the smaller competitions, they use like a lot of laser cut plywood parts, and it's like they're buying them for like $3 a piece, rather than it's like I'll just donate this, like I'll just laser cut a bunch of them for you guys. So I reach out to those guys every once in a while. So I guess I mean I do reach out to some of the people that I know from high school, but it's most of the ones I still talk to are not awestruck at all because they've been with me the whole time and
Right.
they've seen it to this point and they just want to know when I can make their parts. One of my friends the other day goes, "So how hard is it to machine graphite?" And I said, "I'm going to stop you right there." He's like,
Yeah.
"Well, because I need like a 6-inch diameter." I was like, "Nope."
Nope. How much money you got? You want to buy a machine? Because then I'll
I
machine you some
literally said that.
graphite.
I said, "Buy me a crappy like old lathe. I will make your parts." But I
Yep.
am not doing that on any of my current machines.
No, it will be a disposable machine. Like, buy me a disposable machine and we'll talk. But otherwise, not worth
And
my time.
it was fascinating to watch how fast he changed his design.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. He's like, oh, it could be aluminum. Like,
Well, no, I think it's so now it's a 3D printed Inconel part. It's
oh,
like,
okay.
okay, there we go.
That's an interesting change.
So it's a nozzle for a rocket motor. So it's got to
Okay.
be temperature resistant. So,
Right. That makes sense. Huh.
but
That's pretty cool. His last question was, what's the next transformative technology for the shop? Like CNC changed manual work. What will change CNC?
according to everyone, it's Industry 4.0.
Oh boy. I don't know. For my shop, I know the next big step is automation, like we've talked about for a bunch. Like, I think automation is going to get easier and easier, and looking towards integrated automation solutions is kind of where my mindset is.
I think integrated automation solutions, but also things like I think some of the things that is doing where they're like adding like a laser inside the machine. I think that's a
Yeah.
pretty cool technology that's like combining some of the or something I thought was really cool is the Titans putting out all those videos with the United grinding,
Mhm.
or they've got the wire EDM inside the grinder for
Oh, I haven't
dressing
seen that.
diamond wheels.
That's cool.
It's like that's some cool stuff. It's like when people start combining stuff, that's I think where we're going to really see some bigger leaps in technology kind of thing.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I think some of those additive machines, like the laser techs or whatever, those are pretty cool too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't foresee one of those in my shop, but I'm also the kind of shop where I don't foresee myself ever having a 5-axis either.
Right.
But
Yeah. Well, I mean, if those of you out there who have seen the parts that Easton makes, it kind of makes sense. Like they are lathe parts or lathe with some milling, but like, you
yeah,
know,
or it's
if you start making like nozzle cones or something, then maybe you'll get a 5-axis. But
yeah,
until
exactly.
then,
It's everything I do is it's Pat does blocks with holes, I do circles with holes.
right? Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I could see you getting like a B-axis head lathe.
yeah, like maybe a mill turn,
Yeah,
like a Williman, or I was looking at the Nakamura. It's like NTM or something series.
yeah. Whatever that alphabet soup is that they want to call it.
Yeah, it's the like because I don't know about the like there's like the NTJ that like is really cool. But like I don't really see a point to it where it's got the B-axis turret.
That you were the one who posted that video, right?
Yeah,
That is still like one of the most bizarre and scary videos ever. Like I cannot imagine the turret spinning around in the machine, like trying to find
it's
its way.
so scary in person, and they make like one that has like they make one that's a really small one too. It's just got even less clearance. But it's I mean the part of it is not the clearance for me. It's like the one that makes whoa. You just start pouring rain. I've got a steel roof.
I can
I don't
hear
know
it a
if
little bit.
you can.
Yeah.
The part that doesn't make any sense to me is like the whole point of a mill turn in my mind is like you're replacing live tooling with an actual milling spindle,
Right.
and like with that B-axis turret you're still using live tooling, so you still have like the skateboard bearing size bearings, and like you're still at the mercy of live tool bearings.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like like you said, the whole point of a B-axis head is so you have a real milling spindle. Like
Yeah,
it takes real tool holders. You could swap them out easy. It's not live
and,
tooling.
and for the same reason I don't know if I'd ever want a mill turn that doesn't have a lower turret,
I can see that. Yeah.
because I have a feeling, like I don't have any proof behind this, but I have a feeling that like just a capto turning tool in the spindle is not as rigid as a turret.
I could see it. Yeah. I again, have
I have
even
no
less
idea.
data than you do, but
I just that
I
just
believe it.
seems like inherently less rigid in my mind. Like there's the only thing holding that is probably like a shot pin
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. And you're fighting the B axis as well. Like you've got a pin there and a pin in the spindle to hold the angle or whatever. Like there's a lot of things fighting the forces.
And maybe it's not actually a real problem or anything, but it just seems like one of those things where it's why not just also have a lower turret so you can do pinch turning and things like that. So
I think it's a more productive option if you can afford it, for sure.
yeah, but again, I think long before I get a mill turn would be I just get a twin turret lathe kind of thing. But
Yeah, makes sense. TMC Makes asked, your new tube laser seems really slow and loud. Is something wrong with it?
yeah, but it's definitely should not be doing fab work. But it was one of these situations. So I've got a local customer that makes pan drums, which they're such a weird little like niche business, but she makes like these super awesome, they're maybe like 2 foot diameter steel pan drums, and she like has a bunch of hydraulic presses that she and like a couple employees, they press them and they form different sounds and everything like that. So I've made some like die adapters for like holding her various like, I made some like quick change tooling for her so she can swap the press tooling out faster. And so I do some various turn work and things like that. But it happened to be like right as I'm planning to like finally get some of my shop projects done where I need to do a bunch of fab work. I get an email. It's like, hey, we need some more of these stands to like hold the pan drums when we like use an air hammer on them. And so they're like these big rotating stands that like rotates this like 30-inch fixture.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like 1.5 inch square tubes, so it's the exact size I needed to order anyways. Just happened to be like exactly on the day I'm like about to call the steel like supply house. I get this like RFQ. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Like if I'm gonna do some fab work, I might as well keep doing some fab work.
So,
Um,
I mean, for anybody who missed it, it won't be up in your stories anymore. But you were cutting what 30-inch pieces and 40-inch pieces in the Speedio. That's your bad tube laser.
yeah, exactly. So what it was it happens to be, so I reverse engineered this stand, and because they had one that was made by some other company. They're all super weird angles. It's like 71 degrees. And like I was like, I don't really feel like doing this in the bandsaw. Like I don't want to try and like get the bandsaw set up at 71 degrees. So
Right.
I just took the side panel off the Speedio, stuck the bar in the vise, and just used a high feed mill and just zipped off the ends of the bars.
And you didn't hit any sheet metal.
I didn't, and that was so. I don't know what I was like picturing in my head. I think what I was picturing was, I don't know if you saw like Lakewood Machine
Mm-hmm.
posted a couple weeks ago. Like he was like posting something like, as a machinist, sometimes you make like awful parts, and like you got to like put a 40-inch plate in a 32-inch Haas or something like that, and it's like, and he's like, you just got to make sure you can't ever home the machine, or it will
Right.
just destroy the doors. So I'm like picturing that in my head the whole time, only to find out that the Speedio like homes perfectly for this kind of work. Like this, if you home the table, like I can move the table anywhere in the envelope, and the table never leaves the side window.
Right. Yeah.
So you could put a full like 400 millimeter wide plate on that table, and it would never hit the sides.
Yeah. The last shop I worked at before my current job, we had, what was it, VF6 or a VF8 or something that they had cut like a 2-inch thing through like where the doors close. It was just like through the doors, or the doors were off because of this plate, and then through the enclosure on both sides out to the outside walls. They had cut like
Oh,
a
I would
2-inch
never.
thing in it because these plates that we made, they would hang halfway out the machine and then they'd flip them. And so there was a
I
curtain for
would
the
never.
door. It was terrible. I mean, it
That's
was like a
so bad.
clapped out machine. I think it was, I want to say it was a 50 taper that they had done this, but yeah, it was the same kind of thing. You're like, I think they had homed it once and destroyed some of the sheet metal, and they were like, okay, we got to do it this way, and it was just bizarre.
Oh no, yeah. And again, I was like, the only reason I even took this job is just like, well, if I've got to do a bunch of welding and grinding and everything in the shop, anyways,
Right,
what's
do
a
it all
little
at
more?
once. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I got that done today. So I gotta get like I realized today I was like gonna go deliver these to the customer because they're literally 5 minutes from my shop, and I was gonna go deliver them today, and then I realized I was missing like 8 bolts. I was like, okay, never mind. Guess I won't be delivering these today.
And not something you could pick up at Ace or something like that.
I probably could, but it was like I think this was like around like 4 o'clock today, and I was like, ah,
Oh, okay, yeah, right as you were leaving.
yeah.
Makes sense. His next question was, what's my status towards full time? I am 3 weeks out. I have 90 hours left. Not that I'm counting or anything, because I took every Monday off
Now
for the
it's
remainder.
89 hours,
Right.
59 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that I'm counting or anything, but yeah, I've got 3 weeks. So November 1st will be my first full time day at Prodium, or maybe it's the second, whatever that Monday is. I mean, I'll be
Fair
there
warning, the
anyway.
first day feels really good. The second day, you're like, huh, something's wrong. I guess
Um,
I got to go back to work next week. And then, like, the next week comes around, you're like, huh, wait, I guess I don't have to go back to work.
so that was one thing I wanted to ask you, because when was it? It was like a week or so ago. I had a few weekdays off in a row in my shop, and I worked all day, and like Brad was gone or something. Maybe it was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do you ever get, and this feels weird, but like lonely? Like I am so used to working with
Yes.
other people that you're
Yep.
like, oh, it's just me, like forever.
See, this is like, yeah, that's definitely a real problem. It's like you just sit there and you're like, huh, I guess I don't have anyone to talk to right now.
Right. Because
And
I
then
feel like I spend a lot of not I mean not a lot of my day, but like there's a portion of my day that is spent just like
you heard it
catching
here
up with coworkers.
you heard it here first, folks. Dylan spends his whole day talking to his coworkers and not working.
But you know what I
Don't.
mean? Like like I'm sure when you were working at Tormach, like you shot the shit with your coworkers for a little
Oh
while,
yeah, well
and
you're just sitting in a Zoom meeting, just like because we were work from home for a long time, so we just tech support. We'd all just hop into like a Zoom room, and we would just sit there the entire 8 hour shift, just talking as if we were like sitting there. But then we'd be answering the phone and like so you'd like mute yourself, answer a call, like and then you get off the call and you're like, hey, you talk with your coworkers and
right.
yeah, I mean, so my solution is probably not something you can do. My solution is there's a shop next door that I still know everyone who works there, and I know what their lunch times are, so I go and eat
Oh,
lunch
okay.
with them.
That's fair. Yeah, I've
But
got a few. I've got the mechanic next to me. He is sometimes fun to talk to.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just nice to like. It's nice to have someone to talk to for sure.
Yeah,
It's one of those things where you do get a little lonely kind of thing.
yeah.
As weird as that sounds, but it's like yeah, I don't know.
I'm glad I'm not like. It was like such a weird realization because it like there's so many things going through my head of like upcoming like oh I got to deal with like insurance and this and that and like it was never one of those things that's like oh man I'm gonna be lonely like there's gonna be times where like it's gonna be a drag like I mean I knew it's gonna be work but like I never thought about like oh I'm not gonna have coworkers to talk to like at least until we bring Brad on full time.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things too. It's like I find it's fun to like have groups of people to like talk to, and I find myself on Discord a little more often than I probably did when I was actually had coworkers kind of thing. Just because it's nice to just be able to like pop in and just talk to people kind of thing. But
See,
that's exciting.
oh yeah,
Only
thanks.
90 hours left, and you're home free.
Yeah, by the time this goes out, it'll probably be like 80 or 75 or something. So I'm almost there. Almost there.
It's definitely tough.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's like right as you're getting to the point where you're about to be self-employed, you like start noticing everything that's a company is doing wrong, and you're like, if I ran this company, I would. And it's like,
yeah. No, well, and like especially for me and Brad, because the whole reason we started our company was like we were getting fed up with the people we worked with, or not even the fed up with the people we worked with, but like we just saw the opportunity to do things slightly better, and so we were like, oh, we'll start our own company.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's gonna be. I think you're gonna love being full time. It's significantly better for my mental health, but also significantly worse for my mental health simultaneously. It's like it's all of the like the things that you like already worry about. Like if you ever have like a month where something goes wrong financially, it's like when you're employee, you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, I mean that's it, you're like, I'm stressed, but like it's nowhere near the level of stress that you get when you're self-employed. Like
Right.
I don't know if I talked about this on here, but like back in it happened to line up with the first month that I went full time.
Of course.
I had a disaster with PayPal invoicing
Oh,
where
okay.
they held, I think, almost 20 grand in
I
invoices.
I can't remember if you said it on air, but we definitely talked about it, and that's like
Yeah,
so frightening.
it was so scary, and it was like it was near the end of the month. I was like down to like the lowest I've ever been, and you're like, I literally don't have enough to pay rent next month
Right.
if I don't figure this out.
Yeah.
And luckily, one of my customers like refuses to pay me via PayPal, and now
Thank
I haven't
goodness.
any problems since. So it's like now it's been great, but it's like one of my customers like paid me via check, and I was like, thank God I get to drive to the bank right now.
yeah. Yeah,
Like,
it's tough. Well, especially like when your customers start going, like we had just had a customer of ours that they're not like a giant customer, but we do a fair bit of work for them. And they were like, "Hey, can we go to net 30 payment?" I'm like, "Yeah, like you're a good customer, sure." But like, of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, "But I really like being paid the day of. Like that'd be cool too."
Yeah, it's like I used to give net 30 to everyone. Just like, and I don't know why I did that. And then I like pulled that back a little while back, and I like talked to a couple of customers. Like, do you guys mind if I like make that not net 30 anymore? They're like, oh yeah, we don't care. And a couple of them I'm now like re-letting them do net 30 just because it's like, all right, I don't need you guys to pay right now. And
Right.
if it's, I understand that you also have a small business and kind of thing. But
Yeah. I put it in my quotes that it's cash on delivery unless otherwise specified. And then if they come back and they're like, "Hey, we need to be on net 30," I'm like, "Okay." But like, I'm always going to put my best foot forward kind of thing and be like, "Well, I'm going to set myself up for success." And then if they want to talk about it, I'm happy to have that talk.
well, the other one that's like I've accidentally done a couple times where it's PayPal defaults to due on receipt. So as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I send the invoice, it's like it is due,
Right.
and like a customer will be like, "Oh, I didn't realize I was late on that." I was like, "No, don't worry. I like totally forgot to change that. You're all good." Like,
I think some work that I had you do was like that because I got like 2 emails or something between like the time,
yeah,
like it was like a week and a
probably.
half or something or 2 weeks, and I was like,
I think it like auto
"Oh,
sends emails too. It's like you're late, and it's
right."
like, I sorry, didn't mean for that to send. Like, I don't really care. I'm sure you'll pay me.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like I require for new customers, I require a 20% down payment on the job. It's like that's my company policy for new customers, and I haven't needed it until I had one customer that like totally screwed me over, and it was a total savior having that. And it was like, all right, well, that's definitely staying in my company policy,
Yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
smart. That's really smart. Let's see. Jasper asked, "Would you ask him about Sprute Cam?" So he and I were talking on Instagram, and I guess his company currently has Sprute Cam, and you've
I
used
I
it a little bit, right?
I have a little bit, and I actually totally missed his message. It was in my like I rarely check that like
The spam filter, more or less.
the yeah, whatever it is, and I always feel bad when somebody's like, well, I messaged you. I was like, oh, like I totally forgot to check that. So I as soon as I saw that on the spreadsheet, I went and I looked at it, and I did message him a little bit. And I guess as I said to him, as like my response to this is gonna be a little bit lame because I did get into Sprute Cam, but then all of a sudden I got pulled away and something else, and I was supposed to be so. For anyone who doesn't know, Sprute Cam is my best description of it is it's a Russian Esprit. It's like it can be like a simple 3 axis cam, but you can do like full sim like 12 axis cam.
Right. Because he was telling me they use it to program robots
Yeah.
with a milling spindle, but then I guess he's having issues like doing normal cam stuff. Like it's not the robots that's the problem. It's like I want to set up a 3 axis mill, and like I guess he's having to go through and like change settings that shouldn't need to be changed for a tool path to generate properly. And I guess his distributor of it is not fantastic. So I think he said they
Well,
were trying a hyper
is his
mill.
distributor not Tormach?
No, he's in, I think it's Swedish or
Oh,
he's
okay.
in,
Because so Tormach is the North American distributor of Sprute Cam.
right. That's what I told him.
And
I said, because he asked me, like,
I
"Oh,
mean,
didn't you have somebody on that who was the distributor of that?" And I was like, "I don't think so." And he's like, "I think it was Easton." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess Tormach is the distributor of that."
I would reach out. So at Tormach, hopefully Jake doesn't hear this and kill me for giving his inbox spammed. But if you're interested in SprutCam, reach out to Jake Tormach. He's like the SprutCam guy. He deals directly with SprutCam, like the actual software manufacturer. So he's up to date usually with what's new. I briefly looked into SprutCam, not super thoroughly. I need to go back and look at it in the future. Supposedly Sprut can do Swiss, and they just need to generate a config for it.
Oh, sweet.
And so Sprut is really cheap. It's like I think they only charge like $2,000 for a post processor.
Oh wow.
or something like that. And then like machine config is also like $2,000. It's like it's I don't quote me on that pricing because I don't remember the exact pricing, but Spurcam it's pretty cool software. I just haven't looked into it too far. So it's one of those things where I don't know as much as maybe he's hoping to know, but I yeah, it even if you're maybe not in the US, maybe reach out to Tarmac and see if they'd be at least able to point you in the right direction, if not help you kind of thing.
Oh, I was way off too. He's in Germany, but
Okay.
regardless, yeah. So Jasper, reach out to Tormach, see if they'll help you. Hopefully, they can get you on the right path.
Yeah, and if they can't help you, I'm sure they can point you to someone who can maybe kind of thing.
Definitely. Firmworks asks, and this is the one we had talked about earlier. I want to hear your worst crashes, near misses, or the stupidest thing you've seen a coworker do.
All right, let's start off with was your personal worst crash?
Huh. The throwing the part with the FCR was pretty bad. Like it was scary, but not all that destructive. Like
It was. I'm guessing it's one of those ones where as soon as you finished, you hit the reset key and you went into MDI and you ran the spindle through every RPM and listened to it.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's a crash bad enough that you're questioning whether or not you just destroyed your spindle.
yeah. It was one of those where it's like I need to go home and change my pants, but and I've got a nice square outline on the inside of my sheet metal on one side of my Speedio from it.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah, yeah. I picked up a 3x3x3 block and whipped it into the side of my Speedio.
I remember that. I just didn't remember that you actually like dented your enclosure.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
like you can see all four corners of the block.
that's impressive. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean my personal worst crashes would probably be the 3 crashes I've had with the FCR. Most recent one totally demolished the FCR and I need a new one.
Oh no, I
Um,
don't think you told me about that one.
so that one was fun because that one's in front of another person too.
Oh
And
no.
in front of a person that's gonna never let that one go either.
Of course
Too.
not.
It
Was
was
it Norman?
yeah, Norman and I were just yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was so Norman and I were making so he needed a new ball nut mount for his I think it was his ball nut mount for his
Oh, okay.
which he then got the 770 right after that and no longer needs that ball nut mount. So we
Awesome.
wasted an FCR for nothing. But it was came in for a facing pass. I don't even know why this one happened. And it just like the part sucked straight into the FCR and it's gone.
Oh no.
Like the other two, the first FCR one, I think I've already talked about on here. That was like the one where I just like I shanked out on it.
Yeah.
The next one was like I popped an insert. I was doing a batch of parts that come off of the lathe with a little like tit on them,
Mhm.
and I've never had a problem with that tit in the past. Like it just faces off with the FCR,
Right.
but it just caught randomly and just sucked the part out of the fixture.
Oh, that's super
I've
bizarre.
ran thousands of those parts and never had an issue, and it just pulled out. And the first time, I'm guessing it chipped an insert because it happened twice in like 30 minutes. And so I think it took one of the inserts out and I didn't notice. So the
Oh,
next time it didn't have an insert, so it was an interrupted cut.
right.
And so that was the one where I like broke the screw and I just needed a new screw. And after that, the FCR was still totally fine. I was like babying it a lot more because I was using a lower quality screw.
Mhm.
But then I don't know why it just sucked the part out and I just need to order a new one. But
That's not too bad. I would say the worst crash I've ever done, I think I've talked about it on the podcast, was, man, it had to be like the first or second setup I ever did at my first job. And so we had these jaw carriers that were either 8 or 10 inches long and a 6 inch vise, and they were steel jaws with bolt on soft jaw pieces. So they were, I don't know, 3/8 thick by the same length as the jaw. So like instead of the Mighty
so it's like
Bite
a
Talon
hard jaw with
grips,
a soft jaw bolted onto it.
yeah, yeah. So you just have a little
Okay.
replaceable strip. Like if you just need a step to like put parts on that's soft.
That's a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, they work great. But what I did is I cut the step for the part with a face mill, an AXD, so it had the square shoulder. And I was like, oh, well, I'm already here. I'll just set machine tool or machine coordinate Z0 right where I am. And I didn't
Oh
think,
no.
yeah, I didn't think about the 4 extra inches of the tool that was that like the height offset that I was completely forgetting about. And so I go to run the first tool, or yeah, I think it was just the first tool. And the first thing it does is feed down below the part, or like below the top of the carrier at 150 inches a minute, and then it starts feeding. And so it just like nukes this face mill into the hard part of the jaws, like through the soft jaws into the hard part of the jaws, and tries to start cutting with it. And thankfully I was like real quick on the e-stop, but I think I nuked of the 4 seats, I think 2 of them were damaged. And so and of course everybody in the shop heard it and like was like, you okay? Is everything okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Just my ego and everything else.
See, you just unlocked like 2 more crash memories. Like it's ones that you've like buried away. I've
Uh-huh.
got another one was, well, recently was my Renishaw probe.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's
that
true.
was a full rapid crash in the Speedo. That one definitely required an underwear change kind of thing. That was
You did something I am constantly worried about doing. And like I don't think I will now because you did it and it has reinforced how scary that
I
could be.
am so paranoid about it now. And it was even more paranoid that there was like a weird bug in the post processor
Oh yeah.
right after I got the new probe that
Mm-hmm.
almost took out my new probe.
Right.
And but it was so what it, for those who didn't see it, I smashed my Renishaw probe in my Speedo. I was running a batch of tool tightening fixtures, so thankfully we didn't get any questions about that. But those are at ionized right now, so
Woo! I think we've had
and,
questions every other time you've been on about them, so
yep.
thank
So
goodness.
those are at anodized, both Cat 40 and BT 30, and then Rena shields are on their way as well. So little
Heck yeah.
shameless plug right there.
Man, it's
But
like you have like products of your own or something.
yeah, but so I was making Cat 40 tool tightening fixtures. So of course I'm trying everything weird under the sun because it's like that's the fun of making your own products is like I have total like if I scrap a whole bunch of parts, I'm the only one who's like paying money for these. Like there's no deadline. So I was like trying in process probing and all sorts of stuff. So I was setting up my work coordinate offset and something I always do after I probe. I don't know why I don't trust the probe, but I always check to make sure that the probe probed it where I thought it did. So I was just going to MDI and I do like a G50. I only use G55 through G59. I don't use G54. Um, G54 is a work coordinate that I have set in my machine and it only gets used for one job.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
It's a right hand orange vise. It's the top dead center
Okay,
of that vise.
that's fair.
It's for when I use it with pallets. But so I do like a G55, G90, X0, Y0. And for some reason, I wasn't thinking and I put a Z0 in there. And it's not going to call the tool offset. So it just took the probe and it went diagonal and full rapid at 2200 inches a minute into the part.
Oof.
I had to grab the shop vac and vacuum glass out of my Speedo from the probe.
Oh,
It was one of the worst days I've had recently. That was so bad. You're just sitting there shaking afterwards, and you're just like,
yeah.
and you like immediately as you see it crash, you know what you did wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You're like,
Yeah.
and so that was one bad crash, and then your face mill one reminded me of the other one that I've done. The fusion post for the non next gen control Haas
Mhm.
does not use rapids. Last time I checked,
I think it's a post setting, isn't it? Or something
it
like
might
that.
be.
Yeah.
So I was making a fixer plate for my Miyano, my like old drill and tap center, in the VF4 at my day job, and I grabbed one of those Corloy Pro X because we use those a whole bunch. So it was a 1-inch diameter 2 flute, and I had strap clamps on either side of the mic 6 plate,
Mhm.
and I was expecting it to come across the front in it was a 2D contour across the front, lift up above the strap clamp, wrap it over to the back side of the plate, and do the same 2D contour on the back side of the plate. And
Right.
then I was going to move the strap clamps and do the sides of the plate. And So so I've got my rapids turned at like 5%, but my feed rate at 100.
Hmm.
And so I'm in single block and I do it. And so I see it do the like, it does the contour, it comes up to what I think is like the pre-retract plane, like right before the G0. And so I hit cycle start again and it does a G, like it does a Y move at 500 inches a minute straight through the strap clamp.
Oh,
So that was I left a note on my I was second shift or I was first shift, but I was doing this as second shift because it was like after hours kind of thing.
right.
And so I left a note on my boss's desk like, "Hey, I just ordered a new Corloy Pro X from Travers. It'll be here on Tuesday, but the
Oh.
VF4 doesn't have one right now."
Yeah. I mean, that's what you got to do though. Like the face mill I nuked in my first job, like I immediately took it out of the machine and walked all the way to my boss's office and showed it to him. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I did this wrong. I figured it out. It won't happen again, blah, blah, blah. And like, he made me go look it up what a new one costs and was like, all right, like this is what it costs. So you know what tooling costs, like you know what a mistake can cost you. And then he stoned out the seats and was able to use that face mill again and ordered another one. And like, it wasn't a big
It's
deal.
amazing how and it's something I've done several times. And it's like something you're like you see someone do it the first time you're like, I will never do that. I will only run face mills with full insert seats. And then you crash your own face mill and you're like, the diamond files are right over there.
Yeah. What about near misses? I've got one in the Speedio that I'll share. So going back to James, my previous guest from 50/50 Knives, talking about machining late and doing stupid things. I was trying to finish up these prototype parts. I don't even remember who it was that I was making them for, but I'd use a 1/2 inch or a 13 millimeter drill. And I put it in and I swear I had set the tool length and this part's sticking up, 3 or 4 inches out of the vise because I got to drill into it. And I hit go and I was at full rapid too. And I watch it come over and start plunging and hit the red button because it just didn't feel right. And it literally buries just the tip of the drill into the part, into the spot drill and stops. And I look over and it had like 8 inches left to go or something. And I was like, oh my God. And like immediately set the tool. And it was such a lucky and good reminder. I was like, okay, you need to double check all those things. Don't be stupid. Cause like I would have blown up that spindle for sure.
I had one of those like was it yesterday or the day before? I always forget. I've got a folder called TS27R.
Mm-hmm.
That's all of my tool. So I don't know how your macros work, but for mine, all of my tool setter macros are just programs 1 through 21.
Yeah, same.
And so and it calls up whatever tool is in that pocket. And so I like loaded a new tool into the carousel. I went into that folder and I swear I typed like 7 or whatever I was touching off. And I must have not hit enter. Turns out if you're in that menu and you hit cycle start, it'll start the program. It doesn't matter if you're not in like on the program screen.
Yeah.
So it started the previous program that was in the control from the parts that I was running the day before. Luckily, tool 7 was about the same length. And so I see it come down and it's also one of those things like until you own a Speedio, you don't quite understand how fast human reflexes are. It's like you sit there, you watch these machines now, and I'm like, this seems slow. Like I can stop it like 4 or 5 times mid tool change. That's like 0.7 seconds. It's like it's amazing how like accustomed you just become to like the machine kind of thing. All right, what about coworker crashes?
All right, I'll keep it to one because I've seen some real dumb stuff. But like,
no, let's keep it to 2.
Okay, if you got 2,
I've got 2.
I've only got one that I can think of, but I'm sure you talking will spur another one. But the one that sticks in my head because I was right by him, and I think I have told this on the podcast, but I had a coworker. It was this large cover that there's 2 angled holes in, and so the part is angled up so that when it's drilling these holes into other already threaded holes, the part is actually up behind the spindle and it's coming down like in front of the
Oh
thing.
god, this is already going in the wrong direction.
And so each hole is its own work coordinate. And I'll preface this by saying the guy who made this mistake is a very seasoned setup guy and does know better and just like had a brain fart. And so he knew that one of them was G54. And then I guess he was like, oh, I'll prove that one out. And then when it goes to G55 0, if it's set at 0 in the control, it just won't move, which is not the case. If it's 0,
God.
it goes to machine home. And so it goes and drills this one hole, and then it comes up and then runs this part runs the tool into the part, into the fixture, blows up the pull stud immediately, and this tool comes out of the spindle, blows up the pull stud, tool comes out of the spindle, starts banging around the inside of the machine. I'm like standing on the other side of the sheet metal because I was looking at another machine right next to it, and I'm like shitting my pants, and I'm like, are you okay? What just happened? He's like, nothing, made a mistake, and like hits the tool change button, and it goes up and spits the remainder of the pull stud out of the spindle as it goes to the next tool. And it was like, oh my god. It's like I definitely had a heart attack that day.
Well, that's the other one. It's like you see it's so scary to see somebody crash and then they're just like calm about it and you're just freaking out. And you're like, I would not be okay if I just saw that.
Oh no.
Because like the one that I've got, I don't know if this counts as a crash. I guess it does. It wasn't anything dumb he did. Keegan was like, I used to work with this guy named Keegan. He actually works for a shop on Instagram now, which is pretty funny. I found that out by accident. I used to work with him. He trained me on almost everything I know about lathes. And he's like 23. He's super quiet. Like you would, speaking of like our conversation about loneliness earlier, that man doesn't get lonely, I don't think, because he would go like an entire second shift without saying a single word. He'd just be in his zone, just working. Unless you got him talking about Akumas or trucks. Then he would talk. He really liked Akuma lathes and trucks.
Okay.
But Keegan's like, he was running, like I said, that shop has like an ST10 and a Mazak Quick Turn 18 MS.
Okay.
So it's like a 10-inch chuck Mazak. But the previous owner of that Mazak had put a 12-inch chuck on it, which was really nice, but also really terrifying. Because you'd hear it spool up the spindle to like 3,500 RPM with a 12-inch chuck.
Nope.
And it was just like this awful sound because it was just this like, it wasn't an awful sound. It was like a really cool mechanical sound unless you knew what that sound was. And then you were like, that's scary.
Yeah. You're like that's something that can let go and like go through many machines and many walls.
And it was, so they were like these 6-inch diameter aluminum discs that he was making that night. And so in the way that shop has it set up, they have like the Mazak parallel or perpendicular to the wall. And then right in front of the door, they have like a bench that you can like put all your tools on and you can sit at and you can put your print on, etc. And so it was like a little cell. So Keegan is sitting in a stool with his back to the door of the machine, deburring the parts as they're coming off and inspecting them. And so it's like a 6-inch diameter, like half-inch thick disc. And I hear this sound that just sounds like a cannon going off.
Oh, no.
And the disc somehow let go from the chuck. Must have had like a bigger burr or something. There was a basketball-sized dent in the door.
Oh.
And it was right at neck level of Keegan, who's sitting like with his back to the machine.
He got so lucky.
He would have died.
Yeah.
If that part had come out of the window. And this is one of the things that's like, obviously I'm a Japanese machine fanboy, but like I don't trust those like German machines where they have that giant window as the door. It's like I don't trust that. Right. I like the Speedios. Like I don't care about visibility. Like give me the crosshatch. Because what I saw was that crosshatch is what saved Keegan's life. Like that was what basketballed out. But like the glass was just gone.
Oh man, did he actually go home? Because I feel like I would have just gone home at
No,
that point.
no, like our boss was like, "You can go home if you want." Keegan's like, "No, I'll just go over to the SG10 and I'll keep making parts." This
What?
man just gets up, goes and starts making more parts. I was like,
That's no, no,
"What?"
no.
And then the other crash from that job, I had this coworker, and I'm not gonna mention him by name because I don't have very many nice things to say about this guy. But he thought he was like God's gift to machining, etc. Got fired from several mold shops, but still thought he was. He told me he could measure 5 thou with a scale.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh huh.
It was like I was like, okay. I mean, technically you might be able to, but not reliably. And we had a Tree 1060, so it's a Dynapath control, probably the least friendly CNC control besides Fadal.
Right. But a
And
50 taper, right?
no, it was a 40 taper that acted like a 50 taper.
Oh, okay.
It was not even a dual contact, but it was
A
it
beast.
was just a beast. It was like a 12-inch diameter spindle. Like
Jeez.
it was crazy. It was gear driven. So that's where this gets really interesting. So whoever designed that machine did a good job because they knew that if you crash that machine, bad things happen. So the front panel of the machine, like the front side of the enclosure, I don't know if the whole enclosure is, but at least the front side is made out of 1/2 inch plate steel.
Jeez.
So if anything flies towards the operator, it's getting stopped by a piece of 1/2 inch plate steel.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, they
So
know their audience apparently.
yeah, so we were making these wrenches, and it's a job everyone in the shop at some point or another had made because it's like when you're new to the shop, go make wrenches.
Mhm.
It's like everyone in that shop had to use the tree, and this guy goes, and he's making wrenches, and all of a sudden, like I just hear this bang. It's just this horrible sound. He forgot to set his tool offset, which is easy to do when you have a tool setter and your like tool offsets are all set using a piece of paper and
Right.
everything. But he didn't turn down the rapids or anything because he just thought he was God's gift to machining, and
Right.
there's no way I could have made a mistake.
Press go and walk away.
And it was a 2-inch Iskar HM390, which is like the coolest face mill for steel on the planet. Full rapid in Z into the top of a block of 4140.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. It sheared both bolts holding the vise down and spun the vise 90 degrees.
That's a beast of a machine.
Yeah. It had enough torque in the spindle to like take the face mill into the block of 4140 and torque out the like vise out of its position. It was so
crap.
scary. It was so cool. It was like cool, but it's also like, wow. And then we had a program to make soft jaws. It was like if you're ever slow, go make some soft jaws.
Mhm.
And it was a program that was like proven out. It was like using a 1/2 inch end mill for everything, even like the through holes. Dylan obviously appreciates this because Dylan doesn't believe in drills. But,
No, boring is the way to do it. What are you talking about? I want a nice finish on my holes.
But again, my coworker one night was told to go make some soft jaws. I left for the day. Came back the next morning to use the tree, and apparently he didn't believe that program was good enough.
Ugh.
So he swapped out the end mill for a drill and reprogrammed it. But also we used CamWorks, and nobody except for the boss really understood fully how to use CamWorks. And so I came in the morning. There was no note. There was nothing. There were just 2 holes in the Kirk vise. Perfectly spaced as for the bolt hole pattern.
Right. Yep.
So at the end of my shift, I cleaned off the vise and I wrote a bunch of notes on the vise in Sharpie.
You're like, hey, don't drill here or here.
No, that's a little more PC than what I wrote. But
Well, I've got one other one then. I'm trying to pick between two because they're both very similar mistakes. You kind of jogged my memory. So one of them, a shop I used to work at, this guy was making these prototype parts on the 4th, and there was like a real tight tolerance or something. Anyway, he had I think it was a gauge pin that he kept checking this hole with, And one time he
I
left the
already
gauge
know where
pin
this is
in.
going.
Yeah, he left the gauge pin in it, and of course, rapided the tool into it, knocked the whole fixture off, and broke some pins, and broke definitely the tool, definitely the pin, scrapped the part. I was like, ugh, come on. That's like now I'm super paranoid about leaving like thread gauges in. Even when I have them in my hand and I'm looking at them, I'm still like checking in the machine, like, yep, yeah, I took them out.
You gotta get the Wii Fit strap and put it on the thread gauge.
There you go. Yeah, I like that little retractable leash or something.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that picture? I will never be able to find this picture, but there's a picture of somebody doing that with a micrometer.
No.
There's like somebody checked like the plate thickness before a facing operation, and that they went to rerun the facing operation. There's just this picture of like a digital Mitutoyo mic still attached to the plate, but just a face mill took a huge bite out of the side of the micrometer.
Oh, that's some epic level terribleness right there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Next question from T5 Manufacturing. He's got a few. Do you still have the Tormach?
No. Zealous Manufacturing has my Tormach.
Okay. What secret abilities do Tormach machines have that I should know about? Because he's got an 1100 MX, I think.
So back to our previous conversation, Tormachs are practically indestructible for all intents and purposes. As a person who worked in tech, we would get calls from customers that's like, I just full rapid, blah, 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 blah. Just the worst crash stories of all time. I'd be like, well, does the spindle sound fine? Yeah, it doesn't sound any different. Okay, just home it out and just keep going.
Keep on going.
They're like, I mean, they're just, I think part of it is that it's like, they're just not powerful enough to destroy themselves.
Right. I can't remember who was talking about that, but somebody had said that too. Speaking of Tormachs, they were like, there's something to be said on learning on a machine that can't hurt itself. Oh, it was Chris Bathgate. Like that's what he was saying. He was like, it's kind of nice making parts on something that can't destroy itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it, or if it does destroy itself, it's like what a new spindle for a Tormach is what like $800 or $900. It's like the worst possible case scenario is like $900 to replace. It's like there's some like really cool applications for Tormachs that like I can't mention the customers obviously by name, but like there's like Tormach has a customer that does mold work, and he's got like a bunch of Makinos for like actually making molds.
Mm-hmm.
But for his EDM electrodes, he uses a Tormach because he gets 13 tightenings on the gib before the gib disappears. And so when that happens, he just buys another Tormach.
Right. Well, there was that one guy on Instagram who like turned his Tormach into a glorified mag drill.
Oh yeah,
Did you see that?
Widget works, right?
Yeah. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, that's part of the cool thing. It's like people complain that they're expensive machines, but they're for all intents and purposes they're not. And it's like you can modify them, you can crash them. I guess that would be probably my. And the other thing that is they're surprisingly accurate machines. They're like you're not going to get a 6-inch diameter or 7-inch diameter circle in steel. That's going to be more than a like 2,000 circularity probably, unless you do a whole bunch of work.
Right.
But like the Tormach, like the 15L, that thing is, for all intents and purposes, about as accurate as my Miyano.
I mean, everybody that has a Tormach lathe seems to love it.
It needs a ton of work, in my opinion. I think there's like a lot of things that they need to change on it. But like in terms of just raw accuracy, it's pretty damn good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you've got people like Robin Renzetti making Robin level parts on it,
I feel like So Legend has it. Robin has re-scraped that. Robin can confirm whether or not he has or not.
Okay.
But at least that was a rumor floating around at Tormach.
Well, that would change things a little bit. But even like Brad Southard has one, and he's made parts for me before, and like been able to hold fairly tight tolerances and not stressed about it.
Exactly. It's pretty cool.
Let's see. Ty also asked, he asked me, how's my new Speedio? Looks like you got it set up. Did you opt for factory option TSC this time? Have I shed any tears over the Kitamura? I'll start backwards. I have not even thought of the Kitamura until you sent that question. All I can say is that the room it allowed and the new machine it allowed has changed the business. Like, no, I haven't thought about it once, to be honest. I mean, we hadn't used it in almost a full year since by the time we sold it. So
Yeah, it's one of those things you're sad when the Kitamura leaves, but then the second it's out the door, you never think of it again.
yeah, it was like a little saddening watching it leave the door, but literally the second it was on the truck, I was like, whew, what a relief. Like,
yeah, I had the same thing with with the LD41 a lot less because I only had that for like 8 months.
right.
But the TSV was like a little sad watching it go, but then like as soon as it's gone, it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, on to bigger, better things. And then as far as the new Speedio, it's fantastic. Like now that we've got it set up and running, I feel that it's more rigid. I know that like you were the one who told me that like Chicago said that it wasn't any more rigid. I feel like it's noticeably more rigid, like right off the bat.
You still gotta get Ryan on here, and Ryan can explain himself, sort of.
Yeah.
I think Ryan was one of the few people who said it might be more rigid, but I think a lot of the apps guys from Chicago said it's not more rigid.
I don't like just based on the figures in general. I don't know how it couldn't be more rigid. Like it has 50% more casting weight alone than an S700.
Yeah, it's just it's stupid. I like it. I mean, yeah,
but yeah,
it's got to be more rigid.
It feels more rigid. It seems like it's easier to dial in holes and like widths and stuff. Like I feel like I'm doing less.
Than already easy.
Right. I don't know. Overall, I just really like it. Like it's taken a little bit getting used to the traveling head, just not from like a programming perspective or anything. Though I still have to change my post so that it stops outputting a negative 26 in X because the machine's like I can't do that and errors out every time. But yeah, it's just fantastic. Like this.
Are you gonna have two separate posts or just one post that doesn't do what you want on the S700 but does do a compromise?
What I think we're going to do is I'm going to have it so that instead of using G53 and then X negative 26 Y0, I think it's going to output like G54.1 P47 for both machines. And then we'll just be able to set a 0 for both machines.
Why not use the post functionality in Fusion where when you create your setup, just select whether it's the F600 or the S700?
Because that's more work. I do need to do that. I really do. So we'll see. I have reached out to a few post builders so far. I'm going to be working with Autodesk on some like basic functionality that I think should be in the post and get that working. And then I'm going to take it to a post builder and have them, finish out the remaining 10% to what I want.
Yeah, I spent some time this weekend working on my Nakamura with Pete.
Right. Yes.
We got one thing fixed, and then the other ones I'm not going to waste Pete's time because that man has enough on his plate.
Yeah, no joke. Well, you guys fixed that whole moving your parting tool in front of the subspindle, right? Wasn't that what?
So what we were working on yesterday was the work coordinate system on a Haas. You can actually tell it that I'm working on the subspindle. So just flip the entire lathe around, and now it performs like a backwards lathe. On old FANUC controls, or quote unquote old FANUC controls, and I bet the new ones, there is no functionality for that. So what it is I have my G55 set as my subspindle face. So all of my Z values have to be negative.
Right.
On the subspindle side.
That makes sense.
Any positive Z value will send the tool straight through the subspindle.
Fine.
So what I was doing was I was just going in and manually, like any Z value, I'm just sitting there with the negative key and just click negative, negative, negative.
Oh, that's fun.
So
that's super safe.
We fixed that. So now it posts out correctly.
How do you tell it that you're on the sub side? Is there a way in Fusion? I haven't done any sub programming.
So we were like trying a sketchy way until Pete realized, he's like, wait, there's literally a function built into your post already for this.
Oh, sweet.
Like you just need to actually use it. I was like, oh, okay.
Nice. Yeah. I'm looking forward to having a post that's dialed, because like one of the things I want Autodesk to add is tool breakage for the Speedio. When you do tool, you haven't done tool breakage, have you?
I've tried. I spent about half a day trying and I couldn't get it to work.
Is yours program 5000? Do you know?
Mine is, well, that was part of it. We couldn't figure out what. I just need to have Ryan come out and Ryan's got to figure it out.
Okay.
Next time Ryan's like in the area, because apparently somebody in Madison is getting a W1000.
Ooh.
So that'll be the fourth Speedio in Madison. So I there's a shop somewhere near me that has two S700 27Ks, and then I'm the only other one. But so somebody's getting a W. So Ryan's going to be in the area at some point. I'm going to see if I can have Ryan stop by and help me figure out tool breakage detection.
What happens when you try it?
Nothing. It alarms out with some weird errors, and I like was sitting there on the phone like texting Ryan the entire day trying to figure this out, and like I recalibrated the probe and it like did something completely different, which was
that's
sketchy.
Worse. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't really like that, because it was like I was getting some error, and Ryan goes, try recalibrating it. So I like ran a recalibration cycle, and then I got a different error. I was like, huh, I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, you have to be one of the few people with a Renishaw on your Speedio.
I know of like 3 people.
Yeah.
And I am the guinea pig. Like, so apparently the shop in Madison that has the 27K, they have OTSs in theirs.
Okay.
So I'm the guinea pig, and then whatever works on mine gets fed to them.
Nice. Well, then it sounds like he's got incentive to get tool breakage working.
It's nice because it's like the actual tool setter macros on mine are flawless. Like they work perfectly. They worked, and then he like came out with an update, and he just was like, "I'm gonna drop by and like update your macros." He came by and like stuck a flash drive in, and he's like, "These should work a little better." And they like, I didn't even know I needed an update, and then they were significantly better.
Really?
Because it was like initially they were just like based off of tool number, and now they're off of pocket number, and he's got it set up where it's like when you hit cycle start, it tool changes 3 positions away.
So you can load the tool?
Block delete on. Yeah.
That's cool.
And so if you see, it'll just like you start the program, and then you open the door, throw your tool in, close the door, hit cycle start, and then it goes and touches off.
Ooh, I might have to edit mine to do that. I like that.
It's pretty nice. I don't use it very often because I actually have to update the tool length in mine. Unless I'm just replacing a broken end mill. Because mine, I have to put a guess in.
Yeah, you've got long tool, short tool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not long tool, short tool. It's literally like it goes within a half an inch of the tool setter.
Right. All right. That's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think the Blum or the Metro ones are like that, but I like the idea of a block delete. That's...
Yeah, so if I
must steal that
block delete, then it just goes and does it. But it's like it's just really nice. They're nice macros. I just need to figure out the tool breakage detection.
I'm for sure gonna steal that. I like that a lot. That's
it's really nice.
I like that a lot. That's super smart. Yeah, I'm for sure gonna steal that. So thanks, Ryan. Oh, and then his last part, I didn't get option with factory TSC again. The pressure washer works totally fine and saves me almost $5,000. So
did you already do it, or do you still have to?
I still have to do it on the F. I'm waiting for the Black Friday sale.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think it's 25 or 30% off. So I'll wait and get my extra few $100 off and do it then.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't think I ever said, so the F showed up with the TSC. So on the F machines and the M machines and the R machines, I think all of the coolant lines are fed through a bulkhead in the back of the machine. That's like one solid piece with all these welded tubes with threads in them.
Okay.
And I guess it had a weak weld or something on the outside. So my TSC solenoid on the outside of the machine broke the weld loose and then was moving around a whole bunch and ended up rubbing through its wire on the way here.
Oh no.
And then of course it's not a stock item. And so it's like 2 months out from Brother, something like that.
So how frayed is that wire?
Oh, it's gone. Like it's not even connected. Next question. Oh, well, DFM Toolworks said anything except your love for Speedios. A little too late for that.
Broke that one.
Yeah, they're awesome. You should get one. Sorry, I can't help but profess my love for my machines. DM
Yeah,
Ron asked us, since you both have experience with the C0 control and various flavors of FANUC, could you guys go into a deep dive on the differences in day-to-day operation and use?
I don't know what you describe it as, but I think the best description I've come up with for how the C00 is, it's like all of the best parts of the Haas control and all of the best parts of the FANUC control mixed together to form like the ultimate mill control.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Like it's just much more usable, I think, than FANUC. Like there's much less button presses,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
like
there's like, yeah,
go for it.
the shortcut key is like
Oh,
the best the best one is Alex Steingraber.
he's
It's
got the
for
X2,
SP.
right?
Yeah, SPK Unlimited Knives. He was like getting it, and I've been like talking to him since he got that machine. And he got a little bit screwed over because I don't think Yamazon's a little afraid of New York City. I
Mm,
think just because that's Method's territory kind of thing.
right.
And so his apps guy is coming out of Ohio.
Oh, jeez.
And so his apps guy was also his install tech. And it was like he got kind of screwed over on the like training. So he like figured everything out. And it's again, that's a testament to the C00 of like he went from a Shape Oko to this, and he's like, yeah, it's honestly really easy to transition. And but he's telling me, he's like, I really wish there was like a easier way to get to the tool offsets. And I walked out with my phone and I took a quick video and I sent it to him of the shortcut key. He goes, "Oh my god, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And he's like, "I will be setting that up tomorrow."
Yeah, it's amazing. So for those who don't know, don't have a Speedio, there's a shortcut key, two shortcut keys, right?
Yeah, I
You
only
could
use
technically
one of
have
them.
two. Yeah, but you can have, I think it's including both of them, you can have like 16 or 20 different screens registered as shortcut keys. But like for me, I hit shortcut one, and then one goes to my work offsets, two goes to my tool offsets, and three goes to my macro variables that I use for probing. And it's like that simple. It's two button presses, and you're at the most used screens you use.
So to clarify, there's like shortcut button 1 and shortcut button 2. So you hit one of those and then you hit one of the numbers on the numpad for those who don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like, and again, everyone's got their own little special thing, and it's like mine is 1-2 takes me to tool offsets, 1-3 takes me to work offsets.
Yeah. So it's just so nice. Like it makes navigating the control, because otherwise it is quite a few button presses. It's like data bank, work offsets, blah blah blah. So it's just really nice. I don't know. Like I'm trying to think major differences. It really is just like a lot of less button presses. The other nice thing is that because like Brother controls run Brother machines, everything like the help button works. Like if you get an alarm, you hit the help and it like tells you how to release the alarm usually. Whereas like on FANUC, it's like see machine tool manufacturer manual. You're like, great, cool.
Or no, the FANUC one says alarm P/S77.
Right.
And you're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's like something that's shared by Haas, where like because there's that vertical integration, you get really specific alarm codes and really specific solves that work. They're not just like generic things.
And then I would say it's also like it's the reliability of like a FANUC control as well. Because it's like I've only maybe encountered one bug in the control. And it was one that like I called Yamazon, they're like, yeah, we know about it. Or Brother said they're not fixing it, but it was.
Which one was that?
It wasn't even a major bug. Oh man, I'm trying to remember what it was. It's like, it's the if your G code is structured in a specific way, it should work, but it doesn't. I think it's something to do with the G28 versus G53.
Oh, really? Okay.
If you're already at home and you call a G28, it will alarm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's but it only does it sometimes. It's like not 100%. So it's not like that's a function or something that Brother just said like you shouldn't ever call a G28 when you're already at home. Because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right, because that was screwing up your tool setter macro for the longest time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, for the most part, I don't know. Like it's not that far removed, I wouldn't say, from Vanek. It's just a better looking screen and a little easier to use.
And then, I mean, there's still like some kind of Fanic stuff. Like you probably relearned all of this when you got the F600 before you networked it. But those of us who are still not on the network, like using a thumb drive is still pretty painful.
Yeah, it's not great. Like you have to plug it in, type in the program number, hit input.
What?
Oh, do you page over?
Yeah.
You can just type in
You
the
hit the
program number.
F7 and then you have to like select,
Oh yeah, you don't
back,
have to do that.
input.
You can just type in the
Oh,
program number and hit input.
God damn it. I've had this machine for like over a year and no one's ever told me that.
Yeah, there might be a setting you have to change in user parameters, but yeah, you can just type in the
Okay.
program number and hit input from the main screen.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm excited for the D00 because since the D00 is Windows based, which
So
scares
I
me a little
heard
bit.
it's not. I heard
Oh, it's not.
definitively it's not. It's still Linux.
But you can still have third party apps, or you cannot have third party apps.
I think you can have brother apps, and I think somebody can develop it on the brother, whatever their SDK is, maybe or something. But
Okay.
from what I heard, at least, it is not Windows based because I brought that up and somebody was like, "No, it's still Linux."
Okay. That's pretty cool because the part of the D00 that's exciting is potentially we can have Haas probing.
Right, like a whips or something.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
where it's like where you just look at a pretty picture kind of thing.
yeah,
Shameless plug. Dylan makes magnets.
yep. I do. I make mag. If you have a brother and you need to know all the probing routines,
I
all of
use that
mine are.
magnet several times a day.
So the next thing I got to push to you is that I'll send you a copy. Is I'm going to make duplicates of all of those programs. The next number up, so like 801 through 820 or whatever, and they're going to be measuring programs only, so they won't set your work coordinate.
I've still never tried measuring with my probe.
It works great. You just change. You put A1 in the 8700 line and remove your W call, and it'll just measure and send a. I want to say it's like 106 macro variable or 126 or something. I have to check.
I'll have to give that a try because it's the other one that I want to try is I still want to. I got to talk to Ben about what he did to his macros. I don't know if you've ever watched any videos of him probing.
Mm-mm.
His probing is not painful to watch.
What do you mean?
Like there's no delays in his probing.
Oh, I think you just remove a bunch of the weight codes, the G4s.
Yeah, but like, do you remove them or do you just make the number smaller?
I think you just remove them because all of mine are a 1, which is the lowest increment you can do. Like if you type in x.5, it still counts to 1, as far as I
Are
know.
you sure about that?
Yeah, I think P might allow you to go into milliseconds,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
X only goes to 0.5 or to 1.
Because I use and this is something that Norman did a bunch of work because that's what Norman loves to do, and then I haven't implemented it, but he figured out that I can create an M code.
Yeah, you can alias.
Like, that runs a macro.
Mhm.
And for my chip fan,
Nice.
because the problem with my chip fan is if you go from 0 to 8,000 RPM in a quarter second, like the speed you can,
blows it up.
Yeah. So right now, what I do is I just go in and I like S1000 G04 P quarter second kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, you can alias stuff. The thing to watch out for that is I think the Speedio or the C0 only has 3 layers deep of macro calls. So like you can only go like the thing that I'm constantly worried about is if I try to make like a master program and then run multiple programs under that and they have probing. I don't know how many layers deep the probing routines are. I think they're 2. So mine might be okay.
Okay.
But at some point you'll error out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I definitely want to try and speed up the probing because it's like
it's slow.
It's slow. And it's one of the reasons I don't use it on production palettes.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too slow for anytime I'm running production in this video, which is production is this thing, Dylan, where it's like when you make more than 2 parts.
Not for me. Doesn't sound fun. Hard pass.
But it's like I've got that palette that like I threw apart on with the FCR. That palette is really easy to load apart crooked
Mhm.
because I'm only gripping on to an eighth of an inch of a part that's 2 inches tall.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it's it's if I ever have an operator running that pallet, well, hopefully I'll never run that pallet again once I get the cool speed from Pete,
Right.
because I'll be running this in the Nakamura. But
Fingers crossed.
yeah, if I ever run that pallet, or if I had that with an operator, I would love to have a probing routine where it just goes in and checks all 24 parts for orientation to make sure they're, or what I would do is I'd probe the location of the part. And if the location is off, it's going to be off because the part is tilted.
Right.
And so it's like, I'd love to do that, but that would literally add 5 minutes to that program.
Probably, yeah. So for those who don't have Speedios, the reason that the probing is so slow is the C0 control is so fast at reading code that you have to purposefully slow it down with end of blocks and G4s. Otherwise, it'll blow through things. Like I've had, I've had parts before where I'm trying to add numbers in the macros, and it will literally just blow through the code so many times and then finish. Like it won't actually do the thing I want it to do without forcing it to stop and read. Like it's like a speed reader with very little comprehension.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why it's like if you run a bore, like a bore operation on the machine,
Mhm.
without turning on high accuracy mode or using reasonable feeds and speeds, your bores will come out like 10 thou undersize.
Oh yeah, easily.
Luckily, it's on the undersize side always,
Yeah,
but it's like it'll always come out like 10 thou or more undersize. And it's like
totally.
when I first got this video, I was like, I'm sitting there like trying to run programs that I would run successfully on the Tarmac. It's like I don't even understand why this is like so much less accurate than the Tarmac, until you realize it's because the Speedio is actually hitting the acceleration at the bottom of the bore that you're
Right.
telling it to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we talked about that when you first got it. You're like, I don't understand it. Like I have to put like 4 thou comp in every tool, and I was like, how fast are you going? You gave it. I was like, dude, no, like 1/10 that, please. And you're like, oh yeah, holes came
I'm
out right
back
on
at
side
Yeah, but I'm back at those numbers now.
with the high speed codes.
Yeah, you just turn on like M298 L5
Yep,
and just the bores come out
perfect.
right on.
Yep,
Maybe like 1 thou of comp.
if that. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's night and day different.
That's
Uh,
okay. So, all right, we've said a lot of positive things about the C00. I'm going to say one really big negative.
Mhm.
They don't let you do a fifth decimal place, and it really pisses me off.
Yeah. Well,
Because I'm
and
so used to on my lathes, I can just type a like full string of numbers in, and it will just take it and do the rounding by itself. The C00 refuses to do the rounding.
so the really interesting thing about that, and I found that out recently from Greg, is there's a sub micron option that gives you the fifth decimal place.
So that's why they don't let you do the rounding, because it's set up to be used with a submicron option.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's got it on his S700 because
He's got the submicron option. What?
yeah. Yeah, we were talking about it the other night because we were talking about the D0, and I was like, oh yeah, and they added the sub micron. He's like, dude, that's been around since the C0 came out. I was like, what? I went back and
Is that just on the Mode B2 chip?
I don't know. I don't know if you have to have both or not, but it's a specific option. Like if you look at the brochure for the X1s, it's down there at the bottom where it says optional stuff.
They've got fine enough ball screws in there already.
Right.
They've got like my sales guy was telling me the ball screws in the S700 are a finer pitch than the VM ball screws on the for Haas.
Really?
Yeah. Don't quote me on that for sure, because maybe I misunderstood and it's the other way around, but I'm pretty sure they're really fine pitch screws.
Huh. Well, yeah, we'll have to look into that. But yeah, that's why you can't do any 5 decimal place stuff, I think, is that why would they give it to you for free when they can charge you money for it?
Yeah, because it's just frustrating, because it's like I really wish. It's just sometimes nice. It's like I want to move it by 2.5 tenths. Technically, I'm not actually moving it by 2.5 tenths, but it's like in my head, it's like, oh, I need to move it half of what I just moved it.
Right.
And it's like, no, I actually have to pick whether I'm going to move it 2 tenths or 3 tenths.
Yeah, exactly.
Just letting the machine pick it for me.
Yeah, well, it's tough when you're like trying to split like a tenth or two. Like you're like, I want half a tenth of comp, not 1/10. Like, I don't want to open it up by 2/10. But
Well, and again, I mean, it's not like I'm under no illusion that it's going to actually move that half a tenth. I just don't want to be the one to make the decision. Like, both of my lathes just make the decision for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, it's a good control. Vanek's nothing but dead reliable, though.
Yeah, again, I've never been somebody who shies away from Fanuc.
Clearly,
I'm self-taught on Fanuc, and it's fine.
it's not that bad.
It's really not that bad. Anyone who's ever like heard like, oh my god, Fanuc is like the scary like devil, it's like it's really not that bad. It takes you like an additional 10 minutes to let's be real, not 10 minutes, maybe like a couple extra days to like get used to it. Then you're like, okay, never mind, this is totally fine.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of comparison and things that were fixed on the D0 that drive me nuts on the C0, no multi-line MDI, which is now on the D0, and then no calling macros from MDI, which is now on the D0.
That's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up figuring out how to do 3-point bore probing on the Speedio yet?
No. So I was going to steal it from the Blum routines, but my Blum only came with a thing. It came with like a thing that will build probing routines, kind of like the whips. Like I can say, oh, I want to do a 3-point bore. Here's the diameter. Here's the angles. And then it'll spit out the code. But I don't have any of the underlying macros. So I need to reach out to Blum and be like, hey, I paid for this. I would like the macros too, so I can adapt them.
Those of us who make circles with holes would really appreciate the option to not have to have 4 points.
Yeah.
Especially when the circles that I make sometimes are not full circles.
Right. Yeah, the two I want to steal from the Renishaw cycles are 3-point bore and fourth axis leveling.
And fourth axis leveling as in like define
if you've got a trunnion or something, or a fixture that has a flat face, you can just stick it in there and then put it in the center, put your Renishaw probe in the center, and then just say, here's how wide I want you to probe, and it will probe until it touches on both and then level the fourth, so that those 2 points are at the same height.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So that's built into the cycles, but the Blum ones don't have that. So I need to do that.
Is there already one for like finding the center of the fourth?
No, I don't think so.
And there's not in Fusion either.
No. I ended up doing it. I cut a square channel on the fixture that I'm using and then swept it with a indicator to find center. Like I indicated the boss that I machined on it on center, dead nuts, and then went over to the square cutout once I leveled it and went back and forth until it was on center.
In Fusion, like that's something Autodesk needs to fix. You can't pick if you have a round pin. And I can show this to, if you have a round pin, I can show this to Dylan, and you want to just probe the side of the pin, you can't.
Yeah, you have to make surfaces.
Yeah. Like Autodesk just needs to fix that.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Not that hard.
There's some bugginess in the probing from Fusion. Like if you've got a square part or something, and like the sides aren't quite even, like there's a cutout in one of the sides, it won't let you do a 4-point web. You'll have to do each side individually.
Oh yeah, okay. I was gonna say because you can go off of like pick off of selected point kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, but if the sides are just enough different, it'll freak out and like it'll say unspecified probing routine. I'm like,
oh yeah, and that's it. What's even better about that is if you have to pick them as two separate sides, then that adds like what feels like an hour to your probing routine in the Speedio.
Yes.
When it's in reality, like I realized the other day that like my complaints about like the probing speed in the Speedio are completely unfounded.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, I lost 15 seconds. That's stupid.
I don't even think it's that much because I had like this part that I had like 4 separate probing routines on. It drilled and tapped a hole, and the whole cycle time was 25 seconds. But it felt like 2 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, never mind. Actually, my complaints are completely invalid. Like, this is not actually a real problem. This is just a perceived problem.
No, but when you expect the machine to be nonstop zooming around and it sits for even a split second, you're like, what is going on? Is it broken? So I understand. Well, let's round out the episode What have you been researching this week
Oh man, I
besides
got a
parting
list right
tools?
here. I got a list. What since we I don't know how many of these you want to hear about. We got Brown and Sharp screw machines,
Hard pass. Don't do it. Bad idea.
but they're so cool. We got Alfredo pasta. We got
I'm
Swiss
more on board
lathes.
for that than I am screw machines.
We got Swiss lathes. We got the probably the more interesting one is Iskar Pico versus Micro 100 versus the PH Horn stuff.
Are those all solid carbide boring
Yeah,
bars? Okay.
like solid carbide ones, and like the Micro 100 has a quick change. Iskar I think has a quick change on some of them, but not on all of them. And then PH Horn has like a weird like I don't even know how they're grinding it, but it's like a teardrop shape
Really?
instead of a round hole.
Okay.
And
That's
so I've
weird.
just been looking at like which one I want to commit to. Micro 100 stuff is like pretty good, but it's still like Micro 100 and Helical, I feel like are in the same boat.
All of those companies.
I mean,
Harvey, Micro
they
100.
literally are in the same boat, but
Yeah.
I also feel like they are in the same boat. Like it's a really pretty damn good American made product, but they're 30 years behind the competition still.
As far as sales and stuff.
Sales and like in terms of like Micro 100, I feel like they're still missing features that like Iskar and PH Horn have.
Oh,
Like
really?
they have quick change, but like Iskar puts a groove in the side of their bar.
Mhm.
They like take a slitting saw, like or whatever equivalent of a slitting saw for a grinder would
Carbide
be,
is, yeah.
and they just cut like a 20 thou wide slot down the whole length of their bar.
Okay.
And so that's your high pressure coolant channel.
And that's in what brand?
And that's the Iskar like Pico.
Okay.
And like Micro 100 makes you buy like a specific coolant through holder. And like if you want a non coolant through tool, it's like you have to like somehow plug that hole
Oh, that's kind of
or
frustrating.
switch the holders versus Iskar, you can just buy it with the groove or without the groove.
What was the one Grimsmo was talking about one recently that they got for their Swiss lathe? That's like it almost looks like a mini tool holder.
That's the Sandvik or Seiko, I think, has that. It's like, but that's for like the Swiss lathe. That's like a stick tool.
Oh, okay.
That's
Gotcha.
not. That's like an insert instead of. That's like the equivalent of Capdo for Swiss lathes.
Gotcha.
But yeah, because I'm getting into like a little bit more solid carbide recently, so I've been like researching that just because I finally like for years I've been like, well, part of it is at the last shop I worked at, like we didn't believe in solid carbide tools. It was like if it's a lathe, it's got to be inserts. So we'd have like these 1/4 inch diameter or under boring bars with little inserts.
Oh boy.
And then you'd blow up the boring bar because the brazing would fail randomly. Like with the high pressure coolant, it would just pop the head of the boring bar off. And it's like, and I started out and I was like, well, that's just because it's a low quality boring bar. So then I bought a really nice one and it performs really nicely, but then you blow it up and you're like out $200 for a boring bar.
Right. Yeah, if it's going to break, you might as well just buy a solid carbide one.
And that's where it's like it's taken me the longest time to like come around to solid carbide, but I finally found a tool I've been looking for years that I've called everyone. I'm like, I need a 35-degree diamond boring bar, but 1/4 inch. And they're like, that doesn't exist. What the sales guy should have said is that does exist, they just make it in solid carbide.
Who makes it? Who's the one you bought?
The one I've been buying is Micro 100.
Okay.
But they don't put enough rake angle on the front of it, I think. I'm not 100% sure if that's the problem. But in aluminum, it builds up on the nose radius.
Right.
And so I've been talking to Dave about that, and he's going to possibly try and make a similar boring bar for me with the Iskar high pressure groove in it and the quick change from Micro 100 so I can use it in Micro 100 holders. And then we'll see. We'll see if he can make it. There's no promises or anything, and it's like, don't go bombarding him with requests for that. But like, if he can make it, he might carry it as a stock item then. So
that's pretty cool.
what about you? What have you been researching?
Oh man. Well, I told you guys, but my since my car got stolen, I've been trying to. So I my MR2 was stolen last Sunday, and then recovered Saturday. Maybe a week off. Anyway, it was gone like a week. Whatever idiot stole it, like trashed all the rims, dented the front bumper, took it off roading, a lowered rear wheel drive car like you do, and drove it like they stole it quite literally. And so now I'm kind of deciding what I want to do next. And so I'm like looking into a lot of alarms. I think I might just build up my other chassis and just either sell this one or use it as parts or something like that. But
Do you
so
have two MR2s?
I've got one complete and one that was like totally trashed that I cleaned. Like, so the whole reason I'm even into MR2s is that Brad's boss had two of them sitting in his yard for the longest time. And he gave me them just for free because he wanted them gone. And they were both like, literally, the trunks were full to the top with like rat shit and leaves and stuff from pack rats. And so we cleaned all of that and like had it sitting at the shop for so long. And then one day when we were bringing it to a friend's shop because we were getting the TC, I think. We were like, maybe we should just look for a better shell. And we found the one that I currently have. But now that one has been trashed a little bit, it's like, well, maybe I'll just like do it right from the beginning and like strip the other shell, paint it, powder coat all the suspension stuff, and really just build it up right. So I'm doing
You
a lot
gonna
of
paint
research.
it yourself?
Probably not. I'll probably just prep it and then have like Mako do a paint job on it. It's cheap enough. And like, I don't want a show car. I want something that I can beat on and take to the track and not feel terrible about. So been doing
I love
a lot of
painting.
that.
I'm actually doing my forklift right now.
Oh yeah,
I'm stripping it
yeah,
and I'm about to paint it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it, but I just don't have really a place to do it. And like I've done full paint jobs before for like my motorcycles, and it's like a lot of work to do it right. So
yeah, it's definitely a lot of work, and I've never done cars, but I did my Miano. I've done a couple other painting projects. So I've got a nice HVLP gun, but it's like you have to turn the whole place into like a scene out of Dexter. And
exactly.
it's like,
Yeah, if I can find a friend that has a space that's dedicated to something like that, maybe I'll do it myself. But otherwise, I don't know. Mako's what, $500-600, and
yeah,
from
that's
all
not
the
too bad.
cars I've
I
seen,
would,
if you have them prepped well, like if I do all the blocking and sanding and just have them paint it, it's not that bad of a job.
and also it's like with a car, you can actually just bring it to them. Like I can't bring my forklift anywhere.
Right. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's 7,500 pounds. It's like it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let's see. The other thing I briefly looked at was, have you seen those racks? They're like big hanging drawer shelves, more or less, that you can like slide. They're
That sounds cool.
they're super cool. Tyson Lamb just got one or recently,
Okay.
and I saw it in his stories. They are just like, the reason I researched them is because I was like, oh, those are super cool. I'd love to get some of those for the shop. Like, it'd be such a good use of space.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, and then I saw the price and I was like, oh, okay, never mind.
Well, it's like the everybody comes into my shop sees I've got like a knockoff that I built of the Sorimo.
Mhm.
It's like the one thing that everybody like who enters my shop, they're like, "Oh my god, where'd that come from?" It's like, yeah, that's you can either buy it for like 3 grand, or you can grab a bunch of scrap steel tubing and a can of spray paint.
Yeah, exactly. Like these are they're cool shelving units. Like they run on pallet rack shelves more or less, and then there's four, like, it's like if you hung four bookcases from a pallet rack and were able to slide them side to side and like get in between them. I'll send you a link, but like at the standard one that they have that's like 8x7x4 and holds, I think, four shelves is $3,900. It's like, I could buy a lot of Costco shelving for $3,900. So we'll see one day.
Do you have a Northern Tool near you?
No, I don't.
Okay, because I was gonna say the same Costco shelving is cheaper from Northern.
Really? Okay.
At least last I checked, because you and I had talked about that, and then I like looked for one, and I was like, I don't really want to get a Costco membership for the shop, and so then I looked, and turns out Northern Tool had it, so I like just drove to Northern Tool and got one.
Nice. They're fantastic for the money. Like, I can't recommend them enough.
That's my stock rack.
I've got one
I'd
for
like to-
stock and then two full with car parts.
I want to get I want to replace my warehouse racking with that because I don't need my warehouse racking in it. I would save a bunch of space if I got rid of it.
You've got a ton of space, though. I'm jealous.
It's potentially about to get a lot smaller next week.
Well, we'll find out. Maybe have to have you back on pretty soon.
Yep.
Well, thanks again, Easton, and thank you everyone for listening. Patreon thank yous. He wanted to surprise me on his own episode, but Andrew Henry joined the Patreon, so thank you, Andrew, and thanks to everyone else who backs it and lets me do shows like this and send people headsets. Unfortunately, Easton's didn't show up in time thanks to the federal holiday today, but it all worked out and you had a decent headset anyway. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for backing. Thanks Easton for coming on, and we'll be back next week.